The Dark Compass, Stormborn Saga Book 10, written by J.T. Williams, copyright 2019. Part 1, Black Scales. Valrin sipped a cup of tea as he tried to forget his nightmares that woke him from an already rough slumber. Many aspects of this floating shamble of a city reminded him of being on his ship. The creaks of wood beneath his feet, the smells of salt, and the splash of the occasional fish. But there was no breeze. Since the destruction of Aieclo, the seas had been remarkably calm, and not even the strong winds from the north were present. The ocean was changing. He took a seat on the edge of a pier. In about an hour, several of those living here would begin to fish. It was a simple enough life for the survivors. They'd fish in the morning, work to make more small boats midday, and then they'd eat around late afternoon. At night, they seemed to drift into their own groups. Several dwarves were actually wanted to the far south. Those three, especially the one called Warpig, were very secretive in all ways, except for the game of dice Ordek had played with them. Then there were the healers, as Evorn called them. Apparently, the Roos's overlords who had run Cilir limited the types of magic that could be used openly. These healers were more that proficient at their art, and apparently were students of a druid who lived in the elven lands of Narisond. Aviam had become more of a recluse, spending her time meditating. Evorn, well, he had stayed with Valrin at most times. Valrin didn't mind this. Elara and the king had made a point to keep watch, flying every morning to scan the surrounding seas. They wanted to make sure those here remained safe. But those nightmares. Valrin shook, forcing the images from his mind. He could still hear her voice. He couldn't stop thinking about her. It had only been a few weeks, but as he rubbed the stubble of hair on his face, he coughed, wiping away a few more tears. He felt something creep over his hand and noticed Rassi, Evorn's albino snake. He looked further up to see the shadow elf. "Did the herbs not help your sleep?" he asked. Valrin shook his head. Evern took a seat next to him. "I had a dream," Evern said. "Quite an interesting one." Valrin didn't say anything. He sipped his drink and continued to look out across the water. "I was dealing with the god Wura again. There was a giant chicken with swords. It actually breathed fire." Evern took out a pipe, a new habit he had developed being stuck on the free-floating city deemed raftwreck by those upon it. "Is this going to be a new thing?" Valrin asked him. Evern packed smoking weed into the bowl and used a lighting stone to create a few embers. "I need a staff again. This method of creating flame is quite barbaric, but Elara said there is a deep fog approaching. It's getting more difficult to see." "How does that affect anything? We've been here for what, a moon cycle and a half? The priest departed, looking for his method of transportation, yet hasn't returned. We couldn't leave if we wanted, and there is only enough wood here to build a small fishing boat. Nothing good for sailing great distances." Evorn nodded. "And they do not want the dragons to be spotted, for fear of drawing out more of their kin. Elara is a smart one," he said. "That King Nevrin, he's not quite what he was once, but he's honorable, it seems." "In the short term, could they take you to get a new staff?" Evern coughed on his smoke. "It isn't such a simple act, but they could. I have spoken with them about it. We are planning to leave at dawn, but I hadn't gotten to that part in the conversation yet with you." Valrin smiled, finishing off his tea. Beneath him, several glacier sharks swam in a slow circle, the glowing runes on their bodies like lights beneath the surface. He was drawn to it, drawn to the depths. "Then good. You lost something dear, and it should be something you're able to replace." Evern leaned over the edge, seeing the sharks. "Meradaz sends his sign," Evern said. "Glacier sharks?" "I told you that if the gods wanted you dead for losing the Ayla sunrise, then you'd be dead. Sharks like this do not circle just anywhere. Have you prayed to him? Sought clarity like I told you to? It wasn't the gods who built that ship. It was the sea peoples, the Dwenhar. The gods care little for us and our fates. Another approached. Valrin turned to see Alara. Are we not waiting till dawn? Evern asked. We can't go, Alara said. Nevron flew high above us, and these mists and fogs are much greater than any natural formation. He believes they are something else. The sun was coming up in the distance, but with a bit more light. Valrin looked up to see a great cloud rising above raftwreck, like the tall front of a great storm, but not at all a storm. It was silent and brought with it a warm breeze. These glacial seas do not feel so cold with that wind, Alara said. I think I agree with your king. These are not natural, and I have not seen something like this before. Either way, we can't go. You said it was an island not too far from here? Alara asked. Perhaps a fishing boat could reach it? It isn't so pertinent to reach a place where I can take a staff, and I assume we still have not heard from Fadis or any of Taria. Nothing. If our messages are even getting that far. We've been seeing more dead birds and fish across the ocean. It doesn't make sense. Do you think it is this warmer water and air? Evern nodded slowly, but with an unsure glare. I have never seen anything like this, so maybe. I forgot to ask you last night. Did we get that coffee in? If by and you mean did it happen to float by, yes. You have a bit of luck when it comes to coffee, but don't tell Ordak or he'll start going on about cinnamon. Ever since my king made him coffee, apparently it's the only thing he talks about. Got him going for a good 3 hours the other night. Evern laughed, walking to Alara. Come on, Valrin. Some coffee is in order. Valrin motioned for them to go on. I'll come in a bit. I would like to pay my respects to Meradas and his sharks before I go back in. Evern nodded and began speaking with Alara as they went back in. Valrin had no desire to speak to Meradas in any form, but he could not help but think that everyone in his crew had gotten over Bry's death without so much as an extra tear. He couldn't stop thinking about her. His dreams were filled with storm clouds and lightning, her Rusi's energies exploding behind a shroud of darkness. He still felt the surge in the air as he had spun the wheel of the Aieclo sunrise, breaking from the grasp of Marog. He felt the stab into his inner chest reminiscing of the moment he knew she had died, that she had been lost to the sea. It haunted him. Of the brightest stars, 'neath the moon so high, standing in its gleam. I rub my eyes, hoping for once I do not see you just in dream. Over ocean waves and icy breezes, across waters shimmering, my heart is lost. Onto the depths, my soul no longer glimmering. Clouds of shadow, lightning streaks, thunder strikes my mind. My heart is split, my love is lost, no hope I have in the divine. From Travail lone isle in the north, to Suia where the winds do sing, to Gurundothrak the vile and black, to Sailmark and the Elven King, we defeated dwarves of wretched heart, and stood against the vampiric foes, descended down into the depths, facing the darkness that was Aieclo. Through time we flew in shifting tides, weaving a fate to be until we fought to save our friend. And for you two in the end, save me. Valrin had never been one for song. He closed his eyes tightly, forcing the memories of Bry from his mind, chasing away what once was. He didn't want to feel her memory. He heard something, though, that caused him to open his eyes, and he saw an outline of a figure on the waters ahead. Then he heard a voice behind him. Valrin, it seems it is time to move forward. He turned to see the genie floating just above the ground. Where have you been? He paused. And how long have you been standing there? The genie laughed. Good Radahala has been here for some time. Quite the words you speak this early morn. I am impressed. But it is time for us to prepare. Our boat comes. The outline turned to a dark shadow, and Valrin could see a small boat with a single person upon it. His eyes traced over to Raftwreck the genie, and the small man now sat cross-legged on the dock. As the boat came closer to the shoreline, the fogs rolled over the ocean behind them. The boat itself was small and narrow, with a single lamp hanging off the front of the vessel. He had actually seen this boat before, but only in glances. He had never seen the pilot. He had heard of a figure pulling some of the survivors from the water. They mentioned their rescuer had a soft voice, but most believed it was just a dream. As the boat came alongside the dock, the figure paused, a bit surprised, before Raftwreck floated it over to them. "It is time you be known to the one I told you of." As the figure climbed onto the deck, it let down its cloak. It was a woman about Valrin's age, or so he assumed. "Valrin of Travah, Stormborn of the Glacial Seas, this is Millia of Silir. She is my servant for a time and has saved many from the waters here. She will assist us, you will assist her, and she will assist you in the small trial ahead. Now, onto the boat." It was then that Avorn and Ordak both came walking with mugs of coffee. As Valrin stepped onto the boat, Avorn protested, quickening his pace. "What is going on?" "I have need of him and her." "We shall be going," Raftwreck said. "Going where?" Ordak questioned. Avorn scanned the boat. "This is a small vessel. I have seen one like it before when I and Aveum's father went to the realm of Wura." "Holy Wura, blessed is the master," Raftwreck said. "But alas, that is now where we go. Many treasures are needed, but first a tool, an object. Yes, I need the Stormborn and I need Millia. Both will be useful, both pay for their services." "Pay? You have denied wanting anything," Ordak said. "Valrin goes because the gods demand it. Wura demands it," the genie went on. "Do you agree, Valrin?" Valrin looked between Millia and Raftwreck. "What is it you are seeking, and can we not obtain a bigger boat? I would much prefer my crew with us." A ribbon of green lights shot over raftwreck. Raftwreck began jumping from his right foot to his left, clapping his hands. "Oh, very good. Wura blesses us. What more do you need? You need nothing. Good, good." "My sword," Valrin said. "A sword! A sword!" Raftwreck said as he snapped his fingers. Valrin's sword appeared in his hands. He affixed the blade to his waist and shook his head to Avorn. "I will see what it is this Raftwreck wants with us. Keep watch for word from Fadis or the others." "Aye, Captain," Ordak said. "Are you sure of this?" Avorn asked. "What else are we to do? These fogs are making everything impossible. This is the first time this genie has seemed eager to do something." "The fogs? The fogs! Misla's presence! Misla breaches the world! We must prepare! We need tools! We need such items to save the ship! Your ship! The Aieclo Sunrise!" "How long will we be?" Valrin asked. "Not long, but long enough. We need this to move forward with your crew. Millia needs this to be well again, but it will be seen if all can be well in the end." Valrin noticed the stranger Millia had black scales across her arms. As Valrin looked at her arms, she hid them in her robes. "Okay, let's go," Valrin said. As he stepped onto the tiny boat, Raftwreck floated over and stood on the tip front of the boat. Millia pushed them off the dock, and they began a slow paddling away from raftwreck. For a few moments he watched Avorn and Ordak on the docks before mists veiled them. Part 2. The Lone Isle. He turned back, seeing now that Millia stared at him. "You are the one called Stormborn?" she asked. "I am. And you are?" "I was a leader of a thieves' guild in Silir before the destruction." Raftwreck laughed. "Yes, many decisions made had ill fortunes for all. Valrin has lost his ship, has created an enemy unlike others, and has lost his love. You too, Millia, have lost all you built, lost your love, and now you owe a debt to me. It is funny that it has all come together like this. I do not find it funny, Genie, Millia said. He hasn't been the best for humor in the time I've seen him, Valrin said, looking at the genie. But where have you been? You've been gone for some time. Sand cows. Looking for my sand cows. I have to retrieve something, but it is a small token. You, Valrin, shall learn a new bit of lore that you have not heard. Wura has provided a way, and we shall take it. Holy Wura, wise Wura. How does a genie become a follower of Wura? Valrin asked. How now? Is not Wura the god of tricksters? Does he not create the polar lights that ribbon above the far northern reaches? Whimsical and playful, just like a genie. I am but a priest of Wura, faithful, to ensure paths go as they should as best as they can. My companion Yvorn does not care for Wura. He had some dealings with the god and his pets, something about monsters and titans. He says Wura has a cruel way of playing games. Radahala laughed. He does, but that is not what we do here. We go to a place, a resting place, an old place. We need Stormborn fluids. Fluids? Millia asked. Blood, old blood, a place that needs the OLD blood. The genie's random scream made Valrin jump and exhale sharply. Dwenhar blood, you mean? Yes, them. Valrin leaned forward and buried his head in his hands. So, we go to a Dwenhar ruin. Isn't that just a standard adventure, then? He motioned to Millia. I have not seen something such as what is on your arms before. Black scale. Apparently, it is a side effect of being saved from drowning by this one here, she said, pointing to Radahala, and is a sign that means I have a debt to the gods. A debt that will be paid, is being paid, might be paid. Radahala giggled. It is going to remain that I don't have control anymore? Millia asked, confused at her inability to direct the boat. Oh yes, it will remain as such. I guide us through the fogs. The hands of Wura take us to a place. I found this place once before, but I didn't know what it was. Now I do. I am excited. He began to bounce around the edge of the ship again. The fog around them was thick and warm. It was difficult to breathe, and in a way, Valrin didn't even feel like he was on the Glacial Seas. Have you heard from Meridas, or does Wura not care for the one of the ocean? Valrin asked. Meridas has been watching, waiting. You have favor with that one. He will help if he can, but the oceans are not well. Too warm, I'm afraid. When something is cold and made warm, sickness can follow if it is not made cold again soon. Yes, this is very important to all the gods, though they are troubled with events to the south. It seems my old friends are in trouble. You have friends? Millia asked. He means my friends, Valrin said. What do you know of Fadis and Kirla? I know they are there to the south. What do you think I know? Valrin wished he could smack the genie off the edge he danced around, but that likely wouldn't be a good idea. The small boat was beginning to weave through large stone columns. The fogs they passed through seemed to be thinning, and for the first time in a while, they could see the clear water beneath their boat. He had no idea how long they had been at sea, but it was several hours at the very least. Valrin noticed that even though they were not in the shallows, there were buildings visible just under the surface, but still deep enough there was no chance they could get to them without a spell of some kind. Valrin stared at Millia. She didn't seem to be one of magic, and though they had a genie that was likely more than capable of helping them, he had a strange suspicion that their guide would not be guiding them for long. They passed through a narrow channel that had rocks that sheltered yet another passage into a large central pillar of stone that rose into the sky. Plants grew out, reaching into the sky where they twisted up, blocking the sun. The genie snapped his fingers and 2 torches appeared floating before Millia and Valrin. This is a place of the gods. Keep your fornication from your minds. Valrin found the genie's humor, as he assumed it was, distasteful. But Millia pointed her torch at him. I may be bound to your service, but Speak again of such things, and I will be marked for striking a priest of the gods." She glared at him and shook her head. "He doesn't read minds, if that was on your thoughts, but he thinks he is amusing." Radahala laughed again, floating in front of their boat as they moved through the passage, the current increasing and pulling them faster. "Radahala is amusing. It is you who is too slow to understand." He laughed, tearing up as he bounced up the rocks and then back down. They came to a turn in the passage, and the boat ran aground suddenly, throwing Valrin and Millia up on one another. Valrin had landed on top of her, and just as he pushed himself up, she shoved him off. "You knew that was coming!" Millia shouted at Radahala. I did! And it was glorious!" Valrin glanced around. There was a sheer wall and a stairwell leading up and around a pillar of stone. The flow of water was passing into a grated tunnel, and their boat's hull was broken. He kicked at the edge of the boat, and then shook his head at Millia. They both glared at Radahala. "And I assume you have another boat?" Valrin asked. No boat here. Perhaps something else? Yes, maybe. But do I need a boat? I can float. If you can float, then you don't need a boat." "So you brought us here to die?" Millia asked. "Someone will," Radahala said, his tone suddenly becoming sharp and deep. "Before you is a place of old, a place of the Dwenhar. Locked within is something we need, a horn to call them. Find it, find the treasure within. The lost captain's treasure, yes. That is your purpose. Oh, and try not to be distracted by the screams. Wura is always one of tricks." "I always heard he had a penchant for monsters," Valrin said. Radahala stared, not smiling. "The only monsters are the ones we feed inside ourselves, feed with thoughts, actions, words, pain. You two know pain. You bring your own monsters. We will need them in the coming days. That is all. That is what is needed. That and the treasure." He continued staring at them both, floating with a slight bounce just out of sword strike. Valrin had judged that already, and the thought had crossed his mind. The winds whistled around them, and thunder cracked above. Radahala cracked a small smile and then giggled. "You two are too serious. Lighten up. I shall provide. Wura provides. Dear Millia of Selir, you will find some gear just outside the door. Valrin, you already have what you need. You're the captain, and she's the guild leader." "My guild is dead!" "Are the—" Radahala burst out laughing again, and then vanished in a snap of smoke. "Have you known him long?" Valrin asked, pointing at the wisp of smoke floating away. "Too long," Millia said, "but no longer than just before the destruction of Aieclo." Valrin shook off the thought of the genie and began toward the stairs. Millia followed. "So, you're of these Dwenhar? I thought you were all dead." "I'm only part," he told her. "The term Stormborn, or the more sea-centric part of the Dwenhar, is really what I am." "You're the one who made the decision that put me upon this path?" "What?" he asked, confused. "Well, just before Aieclo tore itself apart, I met that trickster of a genie. Me and my love." She choked up for a bit, and then sighed. "We had just escaped Selir, hiding. He sought a scroll we had. It was some time after that he mentioned you and your path going awry, the gods being angry or something. Anyway, I was saved because he needed to correct your path or help you or something. I don't really care." "Neither do I. There isn't much I can say of it. There's an enemy out there. You're from Aieclo. Did you hear of what was happening on the east coast of the island? Strange ships?" They came to a footbridge that crossed over the ocean far below them. Ahead was a large stone statue of two great eagles. They began across the bridge. "I had heard of ships that were not like what we were used to seeing, but never got any more information. The strangest of happenings was when the Rusis priestess fled to the center of the island. The phoenix that was supposed to be killed in the arena had just escaped, too. Quite a few strange things to happen in a short time. I never thought the island would tear itself apart. Well, it was a city, Valrin told her. Sealir? No, Aieclo, the entire island. It was a Dwenhar city. It flew across the skies, burned other cities. Then it had a bit of an issue in the past and crashed. You're the one who was unconscious. You hit your head, right? Valrin stopped, reaching the end of the bridge. I might have. Is that to imply that you don't believe me? Millia shook her head with both her eyebrows raised. No, not at all. That story seems very likely. Well, I once had a ship that could fly, move without the need of wind, and cast magic. Is that more believable? No, I find proof more believable. I thieved. I was not a follower of the gods, as one might say, which is why it is even stranger that this genie priest thing picked me. I didn't even have the damn scroll at that point. Valrin looked at the two eagle statues, thinking of how it was strange for there to be eagles here. I've been to many places, but I've never seen eagles like this. Proceeding further, they came to a solid stone door. Eagles, snakes, statues are statues. Millia crossed her arms. This path seems to end. She glanced up. And I don't even see a window or opening. Perhaps this genie has truly tricked us. Valrin walked up to a pedestal. He noticed Dwenhar runes on the surface and a small orb. He placed his hand on it, and the entire pedestal glowed white. A single spark of energy shot down from the pedestal and followed a line that led to the stone in front of them. The line then traced up the center of the stone, breaking off into two separate trails before crossing back and locking into one another in a central circle. A few moments passed, and the light faded away. The stone became as a door and opened, revealing a pathway and glowing stones ahead of them to light their way. Valrin looked at Millia, who had uncrossed her arms, looking forward in amazement. You did that just by touching the stone? It wasn't just stone, it was a switch. The light was not magic, but Dwenhar technology. It's old, of a different time. Still think a flying city is crazy? You opened a door with your hand. That is like magic. A flying city is still crazy, Valrin, Stormborn, or whatever. Millia noticed a strange chest just off to their side. What is this? Valrin used his torch to search the area around the chest as Millia knelt and opened it. This is from my guild hall, she said. As she flipped it open, she found simple garb, rope, several knives, a dagger, and a short sword. How? She paused, lifting a wand. How did this get here? The gods? Valrin said, half-heartedly saying it because it made sense in his mind. But Sealir was destroyed. This is from my actual guild hall. She pointed at a red raven imprint on the inside of the chest. This was my symbol. This is strange. Valrin turned away while she changed. It wasn't like she asked, but he had no interest in anyone, and the words of Radahala had angered him. I didn't care if you watched. You seafaring types don't get much in the form of entertainment, and I don't give a flying raven what you think. You're not my type. We both lost someone dear to us recently, and, well, I have more respect than likely most others upon the seas. Are you good? Millia nodded. Yes. Still find this a bit too convenient? Valrin turned to the doorway, shining the torch at the effigies and writings he had not noticed before. You'd think I'd be able to read this. You can't? Millia asked. But you're Dwenhar, or sea peoples. I have only their blood, and I was chosen to captain a ship to, well, do things. But I've never been good with reading this stuff. And I've never been in a place like this. How in these seas were we the best choice for this? As they both approached the door, there was a scream ahead. Valrin drew his blade. How does a sealed place have anyone within it? It doesn't sound like a creature, Valrin said. There was another scream. Help! A voice shouted. Come on, Valrin said. They moved forward with haste. Millia drew her sword as well. They passed down a long hall with many offshoots of different rooms. The screaming suddenly got louder, and then there was a snap ahead. A blade passed down the hall, nearly striking both Valrin and Millia. They dove in different directions. Valrin noticed the blade was slowing to a stop. It was gargantuan. The lever holding it was high in the darkness of the ruin, but the blade itself was covered with blood. Millia pushed herself up, hurrying forward. Valrin followed. They came to a large circular room with glowing stones and 3 other large passageways. A stairwell went up to a platform splattered with blood in the center. Millia screamed, jumping to look around them. Here, Valrin saw 10 bodies laid out in a circle, with their heads all placed one beside the rest, or more so, what remained of their heads. The blade had passed directly through the top of their skulls, crushing the bone and leaving a trail of brain matter like broken vegetable pieces all over their bodies. "What kind of nightmare is this?" Valrin asked. Millia knelt down, touching one of the bodies. "Mine," she said. "These were my guild members. I thought they were dead well before now. They had gone missing." "Missing?" "The wraiths. I thought the wraiths of Aieclo had taken them. These markings on their arms, the burning raven, they are mine." Valrin heard crying echoing through the halls. There were voices. "Tell me you hear that." Millia stood. "There are others. They are alive." "For now," Valrin said, "but we need to find what we came here for." "But these are my guild. We don't know that the rest are. We can't become distracted by this." That was the one thing the genie said. He lifted his sword. "But if we can save them, we will. There has been enough death in my life as of late." Several more screams sounded in the distance. Winds shifted through the otherwise still sanctum within the mountain. "Come on," Valrin said. They moved down a path to the right, leading under several low-hanging archways of rock, where vines hung down nearly to the path they walked upon. Valrin noticed that they were beginning into a passage that led away from the main room. "We need to find a horn," Valrin said. "Keep an eye out for it." "Wouldn't this not be hidden away or in a chest or something?" "With Wura, who really knows. It could be in the belly of a monster for all I am sure of. Wura has pets, as he calls them, monsters and titans, but that was a different realm. Perhaps we'll get lucky." As they made it to the next room, the air snapped cold. As if almost triggered by their presence, the path before them turned icy, and snow blanketed the area around them. Ahead was a tiny shack built into the rock. Outside of the shack stood an old man with a staff, poking a small stick into the fire. Oddly, there were several large trees just to the side of the man's abode. Valrin and Millia approached, and the man glanced up. Travelers I have not seen in some time. The icy oceans turn warm, the island of old vanishes beneath the waters, and 2 lost ones come to me. You with the hair and Dwenhar's sword, you're like one who came here before to rest. Do you seek rest?" "I seek a horn of Wura," Valrin told him. The old man laughed, tossing his stick into the fire and picking up a mug to his right. He slurped a bit and grinned. "You two seek the horn? Now that is something to drink to. You girl, what's your story?" "I am a servant of Wura," she replied. "Servant? Aye, servants are good. Wura needs servants. I like to be left alone, but as it were, I've been trusted to take care of some servants, others saved by Wura. But it is up to you if they live." One of the trees suddenly shifted between an icy gray to a bright red. The bark burst apart, and within the inside of the trunk were 2 humans squirming. They were bound by their hands and gagged with silver orbs. "Avla! Rober!" Millia shouted. "You know them?" Valrin asked. "Yes!" She pointed her sword at the old man. "Release them! Do it now!" The man shook his head. "I do not control their fate, only you. I am but a caretaker of the Great One." Wura? Millia asked. I am a servant of the god. He should release those I care about, or I shall denounce him. Do you think it wise, girl, threatening a god? The old man's voice became much lower in tone. You are in a once holy place. Mind your tongue, or it shall be removed. The two figures in the trees trembled. The silver orbs in their mouths began to glow. How do we control their fate? What can we do? The old man smiled, his demeanor changing. Walk away from what you seek to save. Leave them to fate and understand that all who are within this place have denied the god's mark. They are already dead, but they may yet serve a purpose in the teaching of others. I won't leave them. They are alive. Avla has a son who lives in the south. She was just trying to make a bit of gold to afford for them to move somewhere else. She is innocent. The orbs began to glow brighter. A sizzling sound came from the two captured people. Avla and Rober began to scream, muffled by the orbs in their mouths. Walk away, the old man said. Millia stepped forward, and the orbs glowed brighter. Avla began shaking and attempting to pull apart the binds on her hands. Valrin grabbed Millia's arm, and she punched him, leaping up toward the trees. The orbs suddenly made an audible squeal, and the two prisoners' face blackened, and fire engulfed their heads. The orbs both fell out, rolling to Millia's feet before darkening. She turned, lifting her sword to strike the old man, but just as the orbs had dimmed, he had vanished. The room darkened. Millia wept and walked past Valrin, who sheathed his sword. This place was a cathedral of madness, a home of torture. There was nothing of the gods on this island. He followed behind her, returning to the central room. Millia was squatting nearby, holding her head. What kind of game is this? Is this meant to drive me mad? What treasure is worth this? Valrin noticed that the entire hall from where they had gone before had darkened. There now remained the original way they had gone, and two others. One to the north of the chamber they currently stood in, and another to the west. There was another scream. It was to the west. Millia jumped up, but Valrin ran over to her. Wait, he said. I don't think we're going about this the right way. What do you mean? Did you not see what happened before? Did you not see what I saw? They are torturing my companions. I know, I do. But the old man was clear. We must not act but continue forward on what we need. I heard the scream, but this place is nothing but a test. She pointed her blade at him. Then I will fail the test. I will do what is necessary. Then you are damned to die, Valrin said back. What did you say, Captain? She said mockingly, pointing the blade at him again. He parried the blade, taking a few steps back. I'm not your enemy, but fate has put us within the same place. I acted as you, rushing off to do what I felt was right, and it lost me more than I can say. I get taking action to save those you care about, but these people, they are already dead. You heard it, and I heard it. They refused the god's mark, which I assume is the scales you have on your arms. They are here as a test to tempt us, to tempt you. Then why are you here? What risk do you have? I have lost as you have. I must complete the tasks here to undo what I have done. Your people are as good as dead if you rush off to try to save them. Millia sheathed her blade and lifted her wand. There was another scream. Suit yourself to make whatever decision you feel you must. I will do what I must. Millia began down the western corridor, leaving Valrin behind. Damn! He followed after her. She looked back, seeing that he was just behind her, and she shook her head. You change your mind fast. I'm trying to convince you to do the same, he said. This place is not meant to make any sense. You're trying to be a heroine of some kind, saving these souls. I need to make sure you don't get killed. And why is that? I am not one of your crew. Because it's what I do and we shouldn't separate. As they passed through the passage, the light ahead got brighter, and a warm wind blew over them. The stark shift in temperature made Valrin feel a bit woozy, but he lifted his blade as they stepped from the cold stone of the temple up onto brown sand, and a room that almost looked as if it were a rocky mountain near a desert. There was another hut, made of turtle shells of all materials, and another old man. Millia wasted no time approaching the figure, pointing her wand at his head. The old man looked up, and where there should have been eyes, there were only sockets. He was blind. "I hear you. I smell you. You have come to help this old man with his bread?" "Where are they?" she asked. "What?" "You know what I'm asking about." The old man reached up to his face, rubbing the empty sockets where his eyes should have been. "I have not had eyes for some time, dear one. I am but an old man, sad and lonely. Please speak clearer too. It is difficult to hear as well." Millia grabbed the old man, throwing him down and stomping him. "I have no time for your games!" The man began to cry, wailing. She stomped him over and over, spitting on him. "Do you think I care?" Valrin stood back, looking at the high, rocky ceilings of the room and seeing that there were figures watching above them. The old man ceased crying, and his feeble form floated up above them, reaching out to Millia. "You care so little of me, yet you supposedly care for the others," he said plainly. "I am a blind beggar, and yet I am guilty for what the other person did to you. What crime have I committed against you? Why hold those responsible who angered the one who destroyed Aieclo? Why come against me? You threaten my friends. I know you have more of them." "Do I?" The man motioned the area around them. "Do you see them here? Do you hear their cries? I can tell you, I do not see them." The man smiled, rubbing his eye sockets again. "I see nothing, but I feel much. You have anger, as did the one behind you, the one who doomed Aieclo, but is that even true? Will you strike him?" Millia stood up tall and then looked behind her at Valrin. "He's right. It was you. You were who set me on this path." "There was much that put you on this path. We have made our own decisions. We have each taken a path of our own, but I did not plunge Aieclo beneath the oceans. That was the work of another." Millia turned back to the old man, and behind him appeared several large stone pillars with multiple figures standing atop them. "Millia!" one of them cried. The others moaned. "I do not know you, but you know me," Millia said. "Millia, help us! They have silenced the others." The figure looked down at a necklace around her neck. It was a black horsehair necklace with many tongues strewn upon it. "They have silenced us. We are the damned. They come to devour us." The figures high up in the room swooped down, grabbing one after another of the other figures. "Will you pass the test before you?" the old man asked. He offered out a small wand with a crystal tip. "You must only take this and swing it at the flying beasts. They will retreat, and your friends will be safe." Millia went to grab it. Valrin went to stop her, and she paused before he reached her. "Wait, you don't want to stop me? We cannot blame others for the actions we take. We cannot force others into what they do not wish. I offer what help I can give freely. If you seek to stop the killing, you must only swing this wand." He tossed the wand to her. "Millia." "No," she said to Valrin. "This isn't the man from before. The game is different. I will take action. We are in the same cursed place. That is the point. We cannot take action. Let us leave and go down the other corridor. Then we will be done. There is no reason to do anything else." "I did not rise to what I was in Selir by backing down. I will not do so now." She went to swing the wand, and Valrin grabbed her arm. "Stop," he said, staring into her eyes. "This is a test for both of us. Yours is to not take action. Mine is to ensure you do not take said action." Another voice cried out. The woman from before was gone, and now stood a small child. "Please, Millia, please!" "She is a child!" Millia shouted. One of the creatures grabbed the child, and Millia tore herself from Valrin's grip. She swung the wand, and as she did, it shattered in her hands. A blast of magic went out like a spray of water, striking each of the black beasts with a glimmering white magic, but at the same time shredding the pillars. The ones who remained, including the small girl wearing the necklace of tongues, fell into the rubble that then burst into a black fire. Fickle sand mixed with the blood of the black beasts. It became as fire and consumed them, the old man said. "Valrin, you miss the point of the path you take. You have your chance to do as the thief is to do. You have started upon a different path. To get to what you want, you must become that which you are not. Darkness devours darkness when all the lights have already faded. Darkness is upon you, Valrin, Stormborn of Travah. Darkness has consumed me, for all I have seen with eyes or without is darkness." The room went dark and crumbled, sending Valrin and Millia running back down the hall. But it did not stop. The floor quaked, crashing beneath them, and they sprinted, hurrying back into the central chamber, as even this chamber quaked and moaned, stones falling in the distance. Valrin could hear the sea. They stood upon the platform where the first few people had been killed, but looking around them, they saw only ocean, waves shooting up beneath them. The lone path remained. "This place is a trap of death. That is all it is. We are meant to die," Millia shouted. "No," Valrin said. "I have been making the wrong choice." "You? It is that man who drives us both crazy. He taunts me. Even when I want to resist it, he gives me the tools to save them. I'm not a vile person. I must help them if I can. And I must stop it. As a captain, it is my duty to lead, but I've always acted as was considered wise by those around me, until I didn't, until I lost my ship and nearly the lives of all of those with me. But I have started on a new path. I know what I must do, and like you, it is against what I would do normally. Do not worry. No matter what we come upon next, I will act. That is our purpose here. When this is complete, I think that is how we get what the priest desires. This is a test, but one more for me than you. I can do this, Millia." They proceeded toward the northern passage, moving across a bridge that led to a large opening and a tall chamber. But the chamber was empty, and instead of another old man or strange setting, there were 2 more doors. Valrin hurried forward, checking the ceiling before he put a hand on the doorway. It was stuck. He shoved himself against it, and it budged a bit, but did not open. Millia joined him. "On 2, he said. He counted, and on 2 they both pushed open the door, but as they did so he found himself somewhere strange indeed. He knew this place. He wasn't alone, though. Millia was still with him. The door they had pushed upon was no longer there. They were standing in a dark room. He could smell something in another room. Someone was cooking. He walked into the next room, nearly stumbling over a chair that had been left pushed out from a small and very familiar table. He was back home, back in Travah. "Dearest Valrin, blessing to see you," a voice said. He looked up and he saw his Aunt Tua, Part 3, Wura's game. "I had thought you had gone out to gather eels. You left the chair out just as normal. We were going to have a bit of a talk about that." "You're dead," Valrin said. Aunt Tua shuffled eggs in her hands before cracking them into a warm iron pan. "Now come now, Valrin. I know I'm not that old. I'm old, yes, but not dead." Millia tapped him on the shoulder. He looked back to her and followed her gaze toward one of the windows. He saw a strange sight. It was like the night sky, but brighter. He went over to the window and peered out, seeing the polar lights. He went to the door, pulling it open to see the bay and the village of Travah, but the sea was not there. He saw stars encircling them, and it was as if they were moving through a great starry sky at high speed. The polar lights of Wura wrapped around them, and he shut the door. "This is all a trick," he said. Antua had prepared the eggs, flipping them in the pan before setting down a plate. "Eat, good Valrin, eat. Take no care of what came before or what's to come. Just eat. There's no truth that can replace what we all feel from time to time. Homesick? Yes, you are. No need to be sad. Eat, eat." Antua grabbed Millia's arm. "A lovely lady welcome at our table. Sit." Millia did as directed. Antua returned to the kitchen. "I've got a bit of jam for the eggs. You always liked that, didn't you, Valrin?" Valrin went into the kitchen, his sword in his right hand. "Now that's a dangerous thing to be holding in the kitchen. If you need a knife, you can just ask. Besides, He swung his blade across her neck, spraying blood across the kitchen floor. "What have you done?" a voice asked. He turned, seeing Edanos. "You killed your own aunt." "She was already dead like you," Valrin shouted. He lunged forward, aiming for Edanos' head. As horrid as it was, he knew it was not true. His eyes deceived him. Edanos parried him. "You haven't taken care of my crew," Edanos said. "You let my good Rortho get killed, and now Bry. You killed her." Valrin slashed Edanos, attempting a straight attack again. Edanos parried a second time, and Valrin returned the parry, spinning the blade around his own and lunging, plunging the tip of his Dwenhar sword directly into Edanos' heart. He looked up to see the face of Rugag. "How's it to see your own death ahead of time? To see who will kill you in time? Do you not know that your fate is here in these waters? You will die, Valrin of Travah." Valrin ripped his blade out of the dwarf, stumbling backward as he then saw Marog forming in the shadows. "You will lose everything. There is no light in the darkness. You cannot find honor." Evorn suddenly appeared. "Valrin." Valrin jumped, seeing the shadow elf. He looked back, and Marog was there. "Valrin, you mustn't take action. You mustn't do what you think. I've been brought here by the god Wura. You must stop." Valrin grabbed Millia, running outside the house and onto the shoreline of Travah. The house fell away, and Ivern and Marog approached. "What is going on?" Millia asked. "I don't know." "How many will you save? How many will have to die? What is the way to see the truth without a hope under the sky?" "Trickster, trickster, so am I." "I care little of any of you. You're not real." Evorn slammed his staff, striking Millia with a blast of earth magic. She stumbled, casting back her own spell that Marog blocked with his hand. "Stormborn, you must listen to wise counsel," Evern said. "Let's go. Trust me. I see the path." Valrin turned. Millia grabbed a rope tied to a nearby dock and pulled a boat from the nothingness of the beyond. He ran to join her. The boat was white and glowing brightly. As he stepped upon the dock, he felt a shock strike the ground beside him. "You leave me for her?" a voice questioned. He turned to see Bry. Evern was gone. "She replaces me." "What? No. You... He turned, angling his sword at Millia. "Valrin, you must come now. These are Wura's tricks." He looked back to Bry and then looked for Marog. Marog had vanished as well. Bry pointed. "She deceives you. She is not what she claims." "Do not worry of me. Just come on. We must escape this place," Millia shouted. Valrin pointed his sword at Bry. "I know you're not you, but that's the trick." He slashed, bringing his blade across Millia and striking her down in a fountain of blood as he severed the arteries in her neck. The vision faded away, and he found himself standing in a cold room. He looked to his right where Bry had been and saw Millia. She was hyperventilating. "What was that?" "I saw myself as someone else. I saw a darkness in myself behind you. I couldn't say what I wanted. It was all a trick. I expected the old man. I was going to kill him. Instead, Wura changed the game, or whatever controls this place did. It tempted me, tried to change form, and then in the end, I saw through the game. How did you know that the one who spoke to you at the end was me? Because, he told her, sheathing his blade, everyone had spoken to me saying that which was true or was true of them to say in some form. Until you as Bry, someone from my crew who recently died, you said, she replaces me. Bry knew none came before her, and none ever would. I was trying to say that the evil had taken over my image. And you did. At least it made sense to me that way. Valrin sighed, looking down. I am starting to understand why Evorn so frequently curses Wura. He had a desire to return to where he had just been. Even knowing that every feeling he felt during that time in whatever it was he was in was fake, he had been forcing his thoughts away from Bry. He felt the coldness in the air in a way he hadn't before. He felt nothing in his fingertips, and even the sounds of water rushing underneath them that he was able to hear before was blotted out. Do you really think the gods do not feel your pain? Valrin looked at Millia, but it seemed she didn't hear what he heard. I don't know what the gods feel. It doesn't matter. This place is twisted, but it is no longer under my control. Purge this place, Valrin. Your path demands it. My servant does not mislead you, but the one here does. And how do I know you are not who misleads me? You are cunning, Stormborn, but it will take more than that for you to reach your goals. Like a shark upon a hunting trail of blood strewn in the water, so shall you be until a time that the maelstrom devours, and in that time you will see what it is you work toward. Forward unto the next passage. This place is cursed. It was made for those the sea has thrown asunder. They are not what they appear. Keep yourselves in the light of the north. When you see my work, press forward. Do not wait. Valrin, Millia said. What? He asked, startled by her stark works. You were just staring. It was weird. I couldn't get your attention. It's okay. I heard something. This place is not... He paused. He wondered if he should say it out loud. Wura was not in control of this temple, and he did not appear to them in any form, but instead spoke to him within his mind. Perhaps he did not need to say exactly what he knew. It is nothing, Valrin said, a slight wink that Millia caught. I know the path. We must move forward if we are to continue in the gods' game. Millia took a deep breath. If you say so. I saw someone take a bit too much crack root once. They looked just like you. They called it a religious adventure and claimed they were some demigod sent to fight demons in the streets of Cilir. We only convinced them to seek healers by telling them the demons were overrunning the healers. He ran the entire way and was subdued shortly after he got there. Valrin chuckled. Subduing is not needed, I assure you. Across the room, Valrin noticed another door, but unlike the ones from before that had transported them to some weird vision, this one was more like the gateway of a fortified wall. As they passed underneath it, the entire structure shifted beneath their feet, moving downward with the cranking of unseen gears and chains. He could see the sea again. They were underneath a monolithic black stone structure and crossing over a short bridgeway. They came to a platform and a stairwell. There were 2 large torch basins with green fires ahead beside a massive silver door. This looks promising. Perhaps they hide the horn we seek here? It is a bit more like that of a place they'd hide something. Valrin looked over the edge of the railing at the shifting ocean beneath them. The stones jutted up like massive fences, jagged and sharpened by the undulating waters around them. There was a mountainous mound of rock that looked as if it had been perhaps a volcano and a place of a massive eruption at one time. But it was clear to Valrin that no one could have reached this place by the ocean. Even with the Aieclo sunrise and flight, the sudden gusts of wind and pointed rocks made this an impassable pathway for any except who Wura, or whoever now controlled this place, allowed. Following the stairwell, they came before the door. In the silver was an image of the moon, or so it appeared. High above them, the moon shined down, yet it did not seem to have any effect on the door. Valrin went to the door, attempting to open it, but it didn't work. He took a few steps back and then looked for a switch or lever, as he'd expect to find considering his history with Dwenhar structures. But this wasn't Dwenhar. Valrin noticed Millia moving to one side of the door, and then watched as she began to climb up using the ornate rock around the door itself. What is she doing? Millia! I see it. You don't. It's fine. I've got it. He walked over to where she had been standing and saw something on top of the door. As Millia pulled herself onto the alcove, Valrin still didn't understand what she was actually doing. You know, these places are not designed to be broken into by a thief. She began twisting a knob on the black device. And tell me, Valrin, Captain and Stormborn, what place is designed to be broken into? I haven't found one. My point is more so there has to be an easier way than what you're doing. Yes, and it is easier to walk into the door of the tavern and punch the barkeep, but a thief would come in the night and take the entire chest. Doors are just barriers to make people feel safe, be they a lonely barkeep or a prideful god. She twisted the black object, and suddenly the light from the moon reflected down onto an area of crumbled rock. Valrin went over to the spot where the rock was and found not only a broken circlet of iron, but also a small golden bar. That sword of yours, Millia said. Yes? Put it in that spot. You need to focus the light into that. He stared at her. Do you want into this door or not? He sighed, drawing his sword and placing it where she said. A moment later, the light from the moon rippled down onto the gold bar. The door began to glow and opened slightly, revealing a sliver of blackness beyond. Turn the blade! She shouted. He did so and the door opened further. She leaped down, catching herself on one knee. There, she said. And how did you know this would work? He asked. I've broken into more than a few temples in my time. While you were being barbaric trying to force your way in, I noticed the crumbled pillar and mechanism, and I already figured the moon had something to do with it. I once had to use a shield that mirrored light to get into a temple in the desert lands. You wouldn't believe some of the places I've been. She winked. But I'm the crazy one, I assure you. Good thing I'm here. Valrin laughed. Good thing indeed. As they began ahead, they could see nothing of any sort of light. He kept his sword out. The white Dwenhar energy burning on the blade gave them a little bit of light. As they came to the door itself, Millia used her wand to cast fire ahead of them, but the fire simply went out after just flying a short distance. That is strange, she said. It is, but it isn't like this hasn't been strange already. Valrin's point offered little in the form of comfort to their situation. They proceeded, moving through the doorway. Valrin heard a distinct humming sound, very unlike the sounds outside the door. Millia either didn't hear it or was ignoring it. She stepped ahead of him and vanished. Damn this place, Valrin said. Millia! There was no answer. He pushed into the void, feeling the sensation of cold over his entire body. He then emerged somewhere else entirely. They were in a tiny room surrounded by rock. Millia was already trying to go back the way they had come before, but it was no good. What was that? She asked. I don't think we're in the same realm anymore, Valrin said. Not the same realm? What do you mean? Many realms exist. The living realm is where we exist in our normal state, but there are realms of the gods. Even, a member of my crew, once went to a realm of Wura. Well, this is a place of Wura. What was there? Monsters, many monsters. He even described a room like this. Valrin noticed a door on the opposite side. Exactly like this. He went to it and began to pull it open. Millia pushed the door shut. "Listen, I'm a thief, not a monster killer. I'm not for fighting any monsters." Valrin chuckled. "Neither am I, but we're here together, and there's no going back the way we came." He pulled the door open, expecting the same as Evern had told him. In Evern's story, there was a strangely colored sky and massive mushrooms, but upon looking out, he saw nothing of similarity. He saw a hard white surface that went out like a road before them. The sky was black and speckled with stars, and the polar lights were above them, but were a strange silver color, almost as if slivers of moving jewelry more than the polar lights. Valrin went forward with Millia following behind. They both used their respective weapons to light their way, and as they proceeded over the white bridge, the room they had emerged from vanished. As they reached the top of an incline, the bridge rising high above nothingness below them, they looked down to see a wooded dale of sorts. A single river ran across land suspended in the blackness of the realm, and a fire burned brightly between the trees. "These monsters have fire? Is this a dragon?" Valrin shook his head. "I can see the fire. It's more like a campfire." They stepped off the white bridge and onto the surface of the floating land. Suddenly, their vision shifted, and the blackness faded away. The sky became like that of an early dawn, and they were in a land with encircling mountains. But the fire ahead remained like a beacon to their path. He could even smell the wood burning and, even stranger, cooking meat. Carefully they proceeded, moving toward the fire, and it was here Valrin saw many figures. "We must wait," he said. "I wish to watch these people before we make ourselves known." Millia pushed past him. "Trit Nu!" A figure ahead jumped up, holding a spear and angling it toward them. "Trit Nu, it's me!" The figure ran toward Millia, but lowered his spear. Valrin followed, as it seemed Millia knew this person too. "Millia of Sealir," the man said. It was a shadow elf. His pale skin was almost a bluish color, and he didn't look like Evern at all. His spear was unlike any Valrin had seen before. The others with him were not shadow elves, but seemed to be random people. "What happened? How are you here?" Trit Nu looked back at the others. "I'm not sure. I never made it off Aieclo, though Tizar and a few other of my companions did. I thought you dead." "Not quite," Millia said. She lifted her arm. "You were saved by Meridas? I have seen Black Scale before, but never on someone alive. You have a pact with the god? Not Meridas, but Wura. I have never known the trickster to have an affinity for saving lives if I must speak my mind on the matter." Millia motioned to Valrin. "Apparently he is important to the gods. I am helping him, and well, I have found many of my guild within this place. But I did not expect you or these others." "These others, that's exactly what I call them." "You do not know them?" Valrin asked. "I have not a single idea who any of them are. They do not speak. They did not come with me, though they wear the clothing of some from Sealir. What happened to Risa?" "She died." Trit Nu nodded. "I am sad to hear that, even sadder for my part in what transpired. But fate has spoken, and here we are together again." "So you are both from Aieclo?" "In a way," Trit Nu said. "I was under a guise, posing as a guild leader to serve the god Wura. I am a priest of Wura, a holy order of warriors. I still have that which set me apart." He took his spear from his back, revealing a golden shaft with a large white blade that was curved on one end. "It is said in the ancient times that the gods took physical form as massive giants. They warred with the southern gods, the Itsu, and this weapon was forged from the shard of one of Wura's bladed gauntlets. The god himself blessed these weapons, forged by the dwarven god Throka, and tossed them upon the world to be found by those willing. I am honored to hold this blade, but I dare ask, where have I been left? I do not remember anything of Aieclo beyond seeing the ocean and then fire and rock. I do not know how I came to be here. You are in a temple. This is another realm outside the living realm, Valrin said. So, a realm of Wura. I have heard of such places but have never seen the realms of the gods. I have heard stories of a playground of the gods, where sense can't be made and monsters are abound. A place where lesser gods were hidden away or kept chained up as playthings. We know as much as you about this realm. That is one thing we can be sure of, Millia said. So I know Millia, Tritnu said, returning to the fire. Who are you? Valrin sheathed his sword. Valrin, captain of the Ayla Sunrise. A captain? Interesting. I have not heard of you by name, but if you're the one I think you are, you were the one involved with the Taria events and the vampires? Yes, I was. Do you know much of that? Only that the vampires returned. Their queens are angry, and if I know the High Elves, they've went to war again. He tossed a few more pieces of wood on the fire. Not that the Shadow Elves are much different, but we at least have a working treaty with the vampires. They keep to themselves, and we do not bother them. But those vampires in the Western lands have always been a bit different. But the bigger questions are, why have you come here, and what part do I play in this? Well, you've been here. What's the deal? What is beyond the trees? More trees. Every time I've tried to figure out a way to get to the mountains, I end up back here. Which way did you come from? Is there a mountain pass that way? We took a bridgeway to a floating island surrounded by blackness and stars, Valrin said. No pass and no way to go back. This place reminds me of a companion of mine, Evern. He once went to a realm of Wura. Evern? Tritnu questioned. Evern is alive? Yes, Valrin said slowly. Tritnu was suddenly deeply engaged with Valrin, leaning closer to him. He did not fall in battle. That is what I heard. Evern is alive, truly. Yes, very much so. He is an accomplished wizard and has an albino snake companion, very much not dead. Tritnu sat back, pulling a pipe from his robes and filling it with tobacco. He lit the pipe weed with the fire and puffed it several times, puffing his smoke over the fire. A wizard? He shook his head. Playing with magic. Why does he not return home? There is so much going on within the lands. As a priest of Wura, I must focus on the works of the gods, but the Shadowlands deal with many changing events. Can you take me to him? We can work out what we must do, but Evern is a friend of mine. We need him back. I just can't believe he is alive. We're here to find a horn, something involving the lost captain, or so Radahala said. Now that you speak another name, Radahala, I do not have an amicable friendship with that one, he said, pointing at the fire. Oh? Millia said. No, he has tricked us on several occasions. Tizar hates him, but the druid is about the most sensible person I know, and well, Radahala is a bit strange to be sure. Faithful to Wura, but not to the common elf. So, he is not of Wura. He is not a priest. Tritnu laughed. That's just it. He's one of the highest of the priests. He is absolutely faithful, as I said before, but he has no worries of sacrificing others to serve the gods. I imagine you're safe, Valrin. You're something a bit beyond me and Millia here, but if he's involved, you must be wary. He rarely fails in his work, and if he does, he corrects it quickly. This place is a prison. I know that. I was kept alive for a reason. I'm a wielder of a sacred weapon of the gods. I served as weapon master in the Shadowlands before, through great suffering, I decided to move toward the priesthood. Now, I use my spear, a Kalawura, and serve the gods with every breath they bless me with. I had the ability as a master of weapons to train unlike any other master before me, my gift, as it were. As such, I was a great loss to the clans of shadow elves I served. I have no doubt of your skill, But we must escape this place, Valrin said. We can talk of other events at another time, but we need to sort out the point of these woods. When Evorn was in the realm of Wura, he had to defeat monsters of varying origins, and upon doing so, he'd be returned to the place he was before he'd entered. If you say the woods return you here, then the answer must be here. What of the others? They have no tongues in which to speak, Tritnu said in an uncomfortable tone. They just stare. They don't sleep. They don't eat. Then perhaps they're not real, Millia said. Maybe they are just visions? Tritnu stood up, holding his pipe in the corner of his mouth as he grabbed one of the figures. Nope. Looks real to me. As he grabbed the figure, though, Valrin noticed the others turn to look at him, but did not do anything. It was as if they were watching and waiting for something. Valrin jogged over to one of the figures. They stared at him with a blank expression. It was a male elf, but his eyes were different. They were black and lifeless. He began to walk away from the fire and into the darkness of the woods. Millia stood up, and Tritnu puffed on his pipe. "Where are you going?" she shouted. He didn't answer. He drew his sword, the Dwenhar blade burning with a bright white light. He walked through the trees and came to a cliffside. He could see through the vision, seeing the edge of the woods. He went to the edge and looked over. Nothing. He continued as Millia and Tritnu followed behind him. He waited for them to catch up, and Millia stopped short of the cliffside, but Tritnu did not. He walked over the edge and vanished. Valrin looked back to the campfire and saw Tritnu lying there. "He isn't alive," Valrin said to Millia. "What? It is a spell, I can tell that. He is alive. He is as alive as us." Valrin shook his head. "We see the edge, though from the center we cannot. We can see the edge of this place. He does not. He is a part of the vision." "That's insane. He'd know if he was dead, would he? You were saved directly by Radahala. You remember that, right?" "Of course." "He doesn't, and he doesn't know how he ended up here. I don't think he knows he is dead." They went back to the glade, and immediately the other figures and random mute strangers stared at Valrin. Tritnu sat up and looked around. "You see," he said, laughing, "the woods are endless. I told you." Valrin and Millia stared at him without speaking, and he nervously brushed off his robes as he stood. "You found a way out?" "I don't know," Valrin said, "but I do not think everything is as we believe." "Well, we're all here for a reason," Tritnu said. "You do not see the woods as I?" "No, you walked off a cliff," Millia said. "You said the last thing you remember was in Aieclo." Tritnu sat down, nervously pulling out his pipe. He was out of pipe weed. "Then this is what I thought at first. I am between realms, just not like you two. I am in a state before my merging with the gods, or so it seems." "I'm sorry," Millia said. "No need for such words, but why?" Suddenly, one of the mute figures hissed, running at Valrin. He drew his sword, but was only able to get it halfway from his sheath when the person was on top of him. A moment later, two more appeared above him, and he was forced to the ground. Valrin pushed up against the foes, trying to keep their snapping jaws from his face. There was a thud, and then a ripping sound. The figures fell dead, and Tritnu stood above him with his spear. "I think I see my purpose," he said, offering a hand to Valrin. He grabbed it, and Tritnu pulled him up. "Before I was a priest, I was a teacher of many skilled warriors. I had the gift of transference, an ability to increase your ability to train faster and more efficiently. You may be a captain, but your fighting skills are lacking by my standard." "He surprised me," Valrin said. "You were toppled and thrown down with ease," Tritnu pointed out. "These unarmed forms should have easily been bested by you. As it is now, you have come here to learn. But if we are within the realm of Wura, then perhaps—" He lifted his spear. "Hold this." Valrin went to do so, but could not grasp the weapon. It was as if his hands passed through a veil of fogs. Then even my most prized spear is not my own anymore. I am but a spirit of what I was. A small jar appeared in the center of the dale. It was black with a silver top. Valrin went to it, kneeling. He picked up the jar and unscrewed the silver top. Inside were ashes. "So, this is my fate?" Tritnu said. "What?" Millia asked. "I am to teach the Stormborn." "Teach me?" Tritnu went to the jar and hovered his hand over top it. "Those are my own ashes, collected by the god and brought here to this resting place. Radahala knew of this, I guess. You came for a horn, though, right?" Valrin nodded. "Then I am but an extra trinket by the god's design. But if I am to be preserved as such, then your enemy must be great, Valrin." "Marog," Valrin told him, "a spirit of a Dwenhar named Aieclo, made into his own dark form. You seek this lost captain's belongings, or so it seems. I do know of this story, but I'm unsure if I knew it before death. You have been brought here by the god Wura, but I do not know." He looked up at the sky. Valrin noticed that the stars were shining now, and the polar lights were still their unnatural color. "I do not know if this place is under my dear god Wura as we expect. None of this is right. But I give you your first lesson. I must prepare others. But this one I give you. These mutes must be turned to dust." Tritnu stuck his hand directly upon Valrin's forehead. Suddenly, Valrin was no longer in the wooded clearing from before. He was upon a dark rock near a roaring sea. He saw Tritnu hovering above him. There were multiple tentacles rising from the ocean. "Valrin, Stormborn, embrace your name!" The tentacles swept down, and Valrin instinctively reached for his sword, drawing his saber with a ring as it burned with Dwenhar energies. The tentacles snapped, striking him on his right side, but he parried, slashing and stabbing. He felt Tritnu upon his mind and pulling his arm up toward the sky. He could feel the surge of lightning growing above him. As he slammed his sword down, bolts struck repeatedly upon the unseen monster beneath the ocean. Tritnu laughed. "This is Haken Rock. You shall know this in your tongue as Fury Rising, a spell of the Dimn and Wura, a holy spell beyond that of my teaching. You are given this as but a taste of your training. The words you speak will be as the language of the gods, but know you alone are blessed with this holy power." From the ocean beneath him came multiple spires like a pathway before him, just as the one he was on crumbled. He leaped, jumping to the next one and the next one, moving with haste as more of the tentacles appeared. He lifted his sword, feeling the swirling energies around him in the air as lightning formed around his blade. He spun, slashing at the tentacles as they encroached and raining a hail of lightning bolts down upon the creature submerging within the depths again. Multiple pillars erupted ahead of him, forming together with twisting coral and rock into a massive creature of shell and bone. Valrin ran forward, but he felt himself shift to the side. His vision went blurry, and he stumbled forward into a dark room. "Enough," a voice said. He looked down, and in his hands was the jar of dust and the silver lid. "In time, I will call to you. Open, and we shall train. For now, escape. You are near your goal." Valrin stared at the jar and heard footfalls behind him. He pointed his sword into the darkness, and Millia appeared. "What was that?" "You vanished," she told him. "Tritnu taught me a spell, something I've never known, but he said we're near what we search for. I don't get it." Polar lights appeared high above them, and torches began to glow, leading up a spiraling staircase that was otherwise impossible to see in the dark. The polar lights were green, just as he would expect from Wura. But also there was a door leading back out of the tower, or so it appeared. "Come on," Millia said. "That door leads us out." "It is not out we must go, but up. Wura leads us." Valrin suddenly heard whimpering again, just like before. It was coming from the direction of the door. "I hear them again," Millia said. "I hear them." Valrin shook his head. "There is something else at work here. We must be wary of this place. Wura leads us, and, trickster or not, I do not wish to deal with another who would play that he is the god. The silver polar lights in the place we were before, they were meant for something else. But of what, I do not yet know." "Follow me," he said. They began toward the stairwell, and Millia kept her wand to her left, following the wall and the many runic inspirations running up and down it. Valrin could see the sky above them. The view of the polar lights of Wura were not simply a vision or creation of magic. They were going the right way. The test in the room before with Tritnu was meant to have something to do with the mute ones, but you did your own thing, leaving us all. In doing so, you somehow broke out of the room, Millia said. Do you think there was something else I was supposed to do? I don't know, but this place has made little sense. The screams, the visions, the ocean destroying the temple. There is something more. They came to a walkway high above where they had begun. It cut across the tower. Lightning flashed outside, as it seemed a storm had moved over the island. It was then Valrin caught a glint of something in the shadows. Can you cast light with that wand or just fire? I can do a bit more light, but I cannot cast it. He pointed toward their left where he had seen something odd. As she pointed her wand toward the darkness, lightning flashed over and over. Valrin saw a sheen of armor, massive armor, sized for something beyond that of any man or beast he had ever seen. It is like the stories, Millia said. Stories? Of the gods. Perhaps this is a god's armor, kept safe in a temple of his own. Perhaps this is Wura's armor from when he would take the form Tritnu mentioned. There was a door across the tower, this one leading to a walkway that led further upward. Valrin jogged the short distance to the outside and looked out. He did not see the sea from here, only fog swarming like a massive animal around the tower. But above, he could still see starlight and the polar lights of Wura. He pushed forward as wisps of fogs rolled up the tower. They had come at last to the peak of the tower. A massive crystal sat in the center of a circular platform. There were many more of the strange mutes from before. Suddenly, the silver polar lights rushed over the top of the tower, fog shot up around them, and a dark form appeared in the clouds. Wura has abandoned you here, Stormborn. You have been brought to your death. Millia held out her wand, but then pointed. Valrin, look! Beyond the mass of mutes, on the far edge of the circle, there was a silver horn upon a pedestal. That is it! That is what we came for! But as Millia said that, the entire top of the tower shifted, spinning, moving in such an unsettling way that both of them felt sick to their stomachs. Millia fell to her knees, and Valrin struggled to remain standing, drawing his blade with a clear ring as the fogs descended upon the tower. Forms in the fogs held blades. The mute figures ran at Valrin, but with his sword already out, he moved through them, cutting them one after another. As the bodies fell down, Millia saw her symbol, the raven. My guild! My guild! Valrin pushed forward, slashing down the forms and coming across others. Seeing that these figures were gagged, he stopped, just for one of the ones of fog to run toward him. A black blade swung, nearly slashing his head, and he parried them off, spinning into one of the others who were gagged. Valrin! These are my guild members! Through the gagged mouths and with wide eyes, the prisoners cried out, seeking help from Valrin and Millia. All are doomed upon this isle. Stormborn, you are a shark upon a path of blood. You cannot slow. More fog dropped figures upon the pinnacle of the tower. Purge these vile minions of Misla. The gods have acted upon the temple to give you time. You must purge this place. Thunder rumbled across the sky above as the polar lights merged with the silver, the bastardized version of themselves. Valrin ran at 3 of the foggy forms, slashing and parrying upward before kicking and stabbing his way through to the horn. When at last he had reached the horn, he turned. The tower shifted again, and a crashing sound came from beneath them. Winds tore across the top of the tower, and the wails of Miss Guild members filled the air. Fogs rolled over the top of the tower. He lifted his sword into the air, remembering as Tritnu had taught him. "Haken Rak!" Valrin shouted. Summoning the powers of Dimmin and Wura, he drew lightning around the sky above and, in a single motion, slashed his sword downward, blasting the top of the tower with the energy of the sky. Those gagged were electrocuted, and those of the fogs fell away, jumping from the tower. He took the horn to lip, blowing loud and hard. The fogs rolled from the top of the tower, and as those who had been alive shook their last, the crystal at the top of the tower came to life, and in a blast of green energy, the tower was purged of the fogs. The lights of Wura shined above, and Valrin stared out of breath at Millia. "We did it," he said, still trying to catch his breath. "You killed them," she said. "They were already lost," Valrin said. "It was a test." "But you killed them, like that. You didn't even try." Valrin looked at the horn in his hand, and it vanished into nothing. He spun around, looking at the pedestal, seeing it was gone. "It was fake." Millia kept shaking her head. "How could you? It was what was needed to get nothing! Just like you! You've already lost everything! You cost me my life!" She stared at him, her wand at her side. "You killed all that was left. You murdered them. You were so focused on your enemy." Fogs shifted around Millia. "You left me to die." Suddenly, where Millia had been, stood Bry, her hands engulfed in electrified spells. "This isn't real. I already know you're not her." Her voice shifted to a deeper octave. "You know nothing, Stormborn." Fogs shifted around Bry's form, and a blast of energy surrounded Valrin. He held his blade out, the Dwenhar energies cutting through the spell as he pushed forward. His skin began to burn from the arcane energies flowing over him. Each step became more and more difficult as he felt himself beginning to slide across the tower. He stared up, seeing Bry's face, but seeing beyond to a form with 3 glowing white eyes. He reached a point where he could only plant his right foot in front of him, but could not step further forward. His blade was still cutting through the energies as fog split around him. Tentacles came from behind Bry. He could see the form beyond, that which he had not defeated. Valrin lowered his blade, tucking and rolling to the side. The figure turned, preparing to cast again, as Valrin lifted his blade above him. "Haken Rak!" Lightning dipped down around him, gathering around his blade before shredding the form before him. At last, the fogs fell away again. He fell to one knee. The powers passing from the energy of gods through his body to strike his foe had drained him. "Valrin," he heard a voice say. He looked up to see Millia sitting up. "It's hurt so much." She was alive, stricken by his spell, but alive. He pushed himself up, running over to her. "You attacked me, I had to." "I know." She was covered in what appeared to be whip marks. Her skin was missing in some places, and red tissue made it look as if she had been dragged across stone. She looked at the black scales on her arm and gasped as they fell off her skin. "Your service to Wura is complete, I guess," Valrin said. A figure seemingly glowing blue suddenly appeared in front of Valrin. He wore a black coat and a pointed hat, much like Edenos did when he first met him upon the island of Travah. But this was not Edenos. The man looked like Valrin himself, but it wasn't him. He wore a saber like Valrin, yet in his hand was a map and a black box. Around his neck, he wore a horn and a strange circular glass. "Who are you?" The figure did not speak. He pointed. Valrin turned to see a black box appear atop the tower. He turned back and the figure was gone. Valrin could smell the sea. The air was much colder, like he expected in the Glacial Seas. As the moon shined down upon them with clearing skies as the winds picked up, he looked down to Millia. Her wounds were healed, but the scars remained. "I no longer feel the pain," she exclaimed. She was able to stand without Valrin's help. They both turned to the massive box that had appeared. The image of a saber and a moon was on the top of the long and slender box. Valrin noticed that the top of the box was like a covering of some kind. Both of them placed their hands on the slab and pushed, opening the box and realizing it was no mere box. "Bones," Valrin said. There was a skeleton sitting in the garb as the same man they had just seen. Upon his corpse were two items, the black box and the horn. "This is it," Valrin said. He went to grab it and then paused. He felt something, a presence. He looked back behind him but saw nothing but the sky. "Well," Millia said. He looked back down. "I feel something. Something strange. But I must continue down the path I started." Valrin grabbed the black box first, and then the horn, sliding the strap of dark bone and coarse leather around the corpse's head. He felt a strange presence, and as he took a deep breath, it was like a burning sensation in his chest. He threw the horn and strap over his shoulder, and then looked at the black box. On the box itself were silver gears that looked like tiny birds. Using his thumb, he pressed the gears and the box opened. It was a compass. "He mentioned a horn but not a compass," Millia said. "I have never needed to use one with my ship, but I know the basics. This one does not have any directional information. It is simply two spinning white pearls in a sea of black." "One does not need to have directions if it is a place you seek beyond a simple journey." It was Radahala, and floating behind him was a sand cow. "You found what was needed. I found what I needed. A few seeds," he said, showing several glowing red nuts. "The sand cows love them, and now I was able to call one to us." You didn't say anything about red nuts," Millia said. "You mentioned a horn." "And you assumed that was what I needed. No, that was not for me. That was Valrin. That and the compass, the dark compass. Yes, that is needed." Valrin looked up at the massive floating gelatinous thing called a sand cow. It didn't look like anything he had seen before. "It is a good ride. We ride inside, a simple ride back to raftwreck, and from there, yes, from there we go." Valrin went to cover the corpse bag, but as he did, Radahala snapped his fingers and the box closed. "Come now, must not wait." He led them to a ladder leading up into the sand cow. He wasn't too sure about this. There was a tiny structure on the back of the sand cow, not much bigger than the helm of the Aieclo sunrise. They climbed up to the structure and took seats on two cushions. As the genie moved to a position above them with reins of some kind, he laughed. "We will improve this for the greater journey, but for now, rest. We return to our happy home. Rest." They floated down from the tower and moved over the surface of the ocean for a bit, before rising to clear through the fog cover that still existed outside the greater waters around the tower. As Millia and Valrin lay down, exhausted, she looked over at him. "What was that?" "That form, Marog. An evil entity. He destroyed Aieclo. He killed the one I loved. He is my enemy." Millia began to cry, and then wiped her face. "Then he killed the one I loved too." There was silence for a while, and in the silence, Valrin thought of the events of the Lone Isle. He thought about the voice of Wura and what was said to him. He closed his eyes to sleep, when suddenly Millia spoke. "I have nothing anymore, nothing to call my own. I don't know what you and your crew are up to in fullness, but I want to be a part of it, if you'll have me." The end.